guys for coming out. We're waiting on a few people to hopefully find some parking and find us, since this is our first cooking class. A couple of things I have as people come in and sign in, and just remember, I want every single person to sign in. The more numbers that we have every class we have, the more we can justify doing more. We are going to have our next yoga class, which is already scheduled for April the 15th. There is a flyer in the back. You can do the barcode scanner thing and easily sign up for that. Because we did recent changes in support group 2, I have another flyer out here with all of the dates for 2019, so everybody gets on the same page with that. I do have some good news that I found out this week is we actually just got approved for our Facebook page for our patients. And so it's going to take them a little bit of time, I think, to get us signed up and to give me permission and everything. But I'm excited to share a lot of different things via Facebook with our patients. And so took a little bit of finagling, but I'm like, we got YouTube Live, why not Facebook? It doesn't make sense, you know? So anyway, well, without further ado, we're going to get started in our very first cooking class. So as you guys know, Giselle, our dietitian in the hospital program, does have a degree in the culinary arts, but this is our very first cooking class. We're so thankful that they were allowing us to use the Nathan Schrage cooking kitchen. This was donated from donors, and so we're very, very thankful to have access to this. Chef Clint here has been in the Atlanta area for many years. We've known each other a long, long time, and he has been he has worked at places like Two Urban Licks, Agatha's Dinner Theater, Bones, and then most recently he has been a private chef for multiple fraternities down at Georgia Tech. And so I'm going to turn it over to him and Giselle. The idea today is that we're learning healthy recipes that are bariatric friendly. The lucky thing for you folks who've had surgery is you get to have dinner through the samples and you're full. So you get a free meal out of the meal. There's also recipe cards that you'll find in front of you. We did this to make it easy for you. So there's a shopping list for each recipe, and then on the back there's instructions. So all right, guys, I'm going to turn this over to you.
You want me to set this over, Giselle? Yeah, wherever you want to say something. All right.
Hi.
Hi.
My name's Clint. I've been a chef for 15 years. Before I was a chef, I was in the Marines. Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I was in the Marines and traveled all around the world. Went to probably 14 to 16 different countries and had food all over the place. Can you hear me still?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I got the appreciation for it, is eating a lot of bad food for a long time. And sometimes not having enough food or having bad waters. So when I decided to move back to Atlanta from California, I met a really pretty girl who just graduated from photography school. So I was basically just following her around short term. Turns out she was going to get her transcripts from a photography school. I went over there with her. It was a culinary school. They had like a $3 million kitchen in there, and it was just beautiful. Stainless steel everything, you know, granite countertops. It was just really, really pretty kitchen. And all these guys were in there doing all this, guys and girls, were in there just really getting after it. And I was like, man, I think I could do that. I think I want to do that. So culinary school, and then you know, the scheduling kind of goes along with military life for me, like, you know, getting up at early crazy hours and working late hours and hard sweaty work. It just kind of fit. So anyways, to make a long story, like Andy said, I worked in some fancy restaurants in the Buckhead area, and then kind of branched off into my own for multiple reasons. I think when you work for other people in a restaurant environment, you learn a lot, but if you work in one kitchen, you don't get to kind of get the broad spectrum. So that's kind of why I wanted to branch out. And then eventually I did my own company. Sugar Bear Catering was the last company that I had, and I worked for about 10 years at Georgia Tech, and I would cook for upwards of 480 people twice a day, 5 days a week, and I had 6 different locations and 6 chefs working under me. So talk about different menus and utilizing different cuisines throughout the year to keep people interested it can be a challenge. So basically, you have to keep it fresh. Plus, I'm dealing with young people, and young people will give you feedback like this. They say, I don't like that, I like this, I want more of that. So it was a good experience. As far as doing cooking classes, this is following my 10th or 12th cooking class. I enjoy the basic ones because I get to teach kind of the fundamental culinary skills. Recently I heard a good adage as far as like eating correctly and eating healthy, and like in 2019 we're as a society we're trying to make better choices as far as what we eat and what we do with our time. People exercise more, all that kind of stuff. Organic's huge. Think about it. Whole Foods and Amazon combined to have this huge conglomerate nationwide company where they're bringing fresh vegetables to the forefront of their business. I mean, that's, of course, we have to pay a little bit more for the quality, but that's just the direction that our society is going these days. So what I would say is another little thing that I heard recently that I like a lot, that we're talking about, when you go to the grocery store and you walk through those little automatic doors and you make that hard right or hard left to go start your shopping, and I'm not trying to give you a mantra to live by, but it's just something to think about. So this chef was basically saying everything really good in the grocery store is on the outer perimeter. And I never really thought about it. I mean, I just never really thought about it, but that makes total sense. Most of the stuff in the center aisles of the grocery store is not good for you. Most of it's processed, and that's just the way that it is. And then even the grocery store will set you up on those corner end caps, chips and soft drinks and whatever else that it's not targeted for healthy eating and a lifestyle. So the next time you go, make a mental note to spend more time in the produce section. Really, and try new things. That's the other thing. So as a chef and working at really fine dining, it's all about the presentation, and along with that, it's about the dining experience. So raise your hand if you would think you probably eat the majority of your meals alone. Alone, by yourself. Okay. So that's something psychologically, we as human beings, you make healthier options when you eat with other people. Now that sometimes that can't be something that we're going to be able to do all the time, but that's just something. Just think about that. I mean, honestly, when you go even sometimes to a family get together, someone's in charge of the salad, someone's in charge of the turkey, or whatever it happens to be. Then you bring together this beautiful, colorful, healthy meal, and that's when plating and the design of your dish is important, because you want your family to be proud of what you brought over. Think about that as a society. Especially here in the southeast and in Georgia. Holidays are big for us. Everyone likes to cook. Something else that I heard recently that makes a lot of sense, they were saying that like a restaurant portion in the United States over the last 50 years has quadrupled in size. Think about that. We as Americans, our bodies, since our great-grandparents and grandparents, we're getting bigger as a society, height-wise. Size-wise. Look at, I love sports, played sports growing up, football, baseball. Interesting, a couple of years ago, raise your hand if you're a University of Georgia football fan. I know I am, I like to watch them. A couple of years ago, the offensive line was the biggest offensive line in football. Not just in college, in football. I mean, they had 400-pounders that are kids, 21, 22 years old? That says something about our society as far as, weight training and eating, and they've got these young guys eating 7 meals a day. I mean, they're putting down 12,000 calories a day. That's not a normal thing. Our grandparents would have been like, whoa, this doesn't make any sense. Just that kind of smaller portions are something that takes practice, but when it's health related, it gets back to the exercise and moderation, and obviously the ladies here are going to know more about your specific diet needs. I'm just here to kind of give you a little bit of a fun evening, and let's talk about some fun food. But one thing that I will tell you that will make you successful, and it's a lot more fun, shopping, researching your ingredients. Where do your ingredients come from? Where are they grown? How are they grown? How did they get here? Those are all little things that go into the culinary mindset to keep you interested. And like for even for my family, I've got a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. So the 6-year-old is easier to kind of educate on these things. But like when we go to the store, when local produce is in season here, that's exciting, because I say, oh look, Vidalia onions. Do you know where those come from? And you get to kind of teach, just like when I was a kid, my grandmother did the same thing. Look at the Georgia peaches. We need to be proud of these things. But then at the same time, the center aisle of that grocery store is where she wants to go, right? That's where the toy aisle is. That's where the candy aisle is. The chips, the mac and cheese. with the different shapes, and I get, and we still do a little bit of that, but I try to spend the majority on the outside, and now it's become an inside joke for my family. Is let's stay on the outside. Just kind of a joke.
Can I add something
Sure,
to that real quick?
Absolutely.
Oh, this is not work. Oh, hello.
Hello?
Okay.
And the interesting thing too, Chef, is that now there's a lot of foods in the inner aisles that they market them as healthy, and they put these awesome labels in them with like brownish, greenish colors and farms and this happy people in the background. And really, if you look at the nutrition facts label or you look at the ingredients list, it might be 20 ingredients long. So I also try to advise my patients to be careful about that.
Yeah, food marketing in itself is borderline unethical. Like sometimes they'll put 0 trans fat. Trans fat is an animal fat, right? So sometimes they'll put that on a product that's not a protein item, but they're putting that up there so you go, oh, no
Right.
trans fat.
So
You're not really thinking, but like that's kind of the thing. Like another one that's really big is like in the cereal aisle. There's several where they'll say, no artificial flavors. We're like, well, it's a cereal, so of course there is some artificial
Or
flavors.
gluten-free mayo.
Sure.
Like what?
Little things like that. Even what is the General Mills who manufactures Cheerios? Actually, there was a little bit. I don't want to say there was a lawsuit, but I know someone personally who bought the gluten-free Cheerios, and they're advertised on the box as gluten-free. She has celiac disease, which means she cannot have any gluten-free, and that gluten-free cereal made her sick. She had to go to the hospital, and then they ran this conversation all the way up the chain of command to General Mills. They said, well, it's made in the same, they're the next thing over.
Same as there's
Yeah.
no such thing as
Sure.
gluten-free in a pizzeria. Just tell me.
So that's kind of some good baselines to start our healthy cooking class. Knife skills are very important. There's a chef that I came up with who's very famous in the Atlanta area. He's got a dozen restaurants. He's in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And he got his start at the same place that I did, the Art Institute of Atlanta, and then he went on to work at the Ritz-Carlton. Now, when I was at that crossroads, I decided not to go that route because they pay you very little and teach you very much. But at the time, I couldn't afford to live on very little. So I had to kind of jump into a different arena. But in those fine dining places, and especially like the Ritz-Carlton, they focus on knife skills. And so, I kid you not, he's based his career off of very pretty plating, proper technique, but the plating is beautiful, and he still preaches that 20 years later. Knife skills are one of the things. So before I even got started, we were talking about this piece of equipment that was up here, and it's just a basic food processor, and for some reason it doesn't work. I don't know if it's the electrics or if it's just, or what the situation is. And so I tease because technology will fail you. So for instance, I recently went and looked at a new residential refrigerator for myself for my home, and they've got these new ones that are going to tell you when you run out of milk, and when you need eggs, and when you need this. And I just, as a general principle, I said, no thanks. Where's the one without the computer? Because that regular refrigerator will work for the next 12, 15 years just fine, hopefully, right? Anyway, let's go ahead and get started, and we'll talk about the menu for this evening, and then we can kind of get into the recipes on those kind of things. So we just kind of started a really basic one just to kind of get us off the ground with this program. And basically, our initial ideas kind of transformed into what we have tonight to give you kind of a couple different things. We wanted to discuss different cooking methods. So you got sautéing and pan frying. They're not the same thing. Pan frying would be when you put a whole bunch of oil in there and fry something. And since we're in the southeast and we're in Georgia, it's a popular technique. I know my mother does that all the time, and then they complain about health issues, and I go, well, you're doing bone-in fried chicken every other week, and you're worried about it. Anyway, sautéing would be when you get your pan really, really hot and put just a little bit of oil in it, and then you quickly, it's an active cooking method. So the sautéing, blanching, steaming, these are kind of your healthier cooking options. Grilling is a great one since we're getting into warm spring weather, summertime. It also adds a different flavor profile. These are important to keep your meals fresh. Baking and roasting and braising in the oven are great, but those are the bland ones, kind of like steaming and boiling. Those are not going to be the best for flavor. So the ones that I would suggest, like I said, grilling and sautéing are going to be you're going to get your best flavor profiles. Also, those are active cooking methods. where you're physically having to monitor that, right? And as opposed to frying, where you might put something in some grease and walk off for a little bit or whatever you're doing. Even at my house in a residential, setting, even around the holidays, I put my turkey on the smoker these days. I rub it down with a little rub and let it sit for 5 hours, and I'm good. And the old days of basting things in butter, I don't use butter at all in my house, unless it's maybe 1 or 2, mashed potatoes for the holidays. That's about it. One of the last big operations that I worked at was at a sorority at Georgia Tech. So I've got 18 to 22-year-old girls, and they're very healthy-minded these days. And there's a half a dozen different dietary restrictions that they've got to work with. So I was the new chef, and they said, "Well, we don't like to cook butter," and I was like, "I don't want to use it, so we're good." One thing that we would talk about is like your oils. The different types of oils that are for sale in that grocery store. And I'm not going to say every time, but a lot of the time, the more expensive olive oil is the best route to go. Anytime it says extra virgin, that means it's the more pure. And you also have to watch what the branding, which is once again when we're talking about branding with, certain products, say that they're gluten-free or they're, fat-free or trans-fat-free or whatever that might be. Olive oil can be one of those too. So if it's the cheaper ones, not always the best route. Once again, you use it in moderation, but still, it's a good technique. Okay, so getting back to the menu at hand. Tonight we're going to do some pureed sweet potatoes with sliced seasoned chicken and sautéed bell peppers, roast asparagus, and then for dessert we're just going to do a yogurt parfait fruit cup, which can be made in advance. Also for breakfast, which is a nice one. That's a really popular trend these days. Some people even put them in little mason jars so they can take them with them on the road, and then when they get to work, you pop the cap and you're ready to eat. So one thing, let's go ahead and get started with do you have these guys already? Do you have some that are already ready to go, or these? Okay.
No.
So let's go ahead and get started with those guys.
I'll start peeling them.
Yeah, that'd be great. So Giselle will get started on that, and I'll get started on chicken, because those are going to be the 2 things that take the longest. So something to remember when you're doing meal prep that makes a lot of people nervous when they try to cook at home is how to get started. And typically, this sounds funny, but typically I work backwards. So if something takes a long time, I do that first, which is why I put her on sweet potato duty.
So okay if I do it here?
Sure, you can do it wherever you like. Yeah, here's a trash can too, you can use that for your peels. So, so like typically I like to work backwards. So if it's like, once again, we'll get back to the holidays, because that's a big time around where everyone's bringing a dish. The turkey that takes the longest, that's what I start off first, and then I get into the next thing.
As you're working, I want to say something then.
Is this one on? Yeah. So my question to you guys is, looking at the menu that you've got in front of you, what part of this meal do you want to eat first? So chicken, right? Because protein is what's going to make our pouch feel full. What else? What would be your second choice to eat?
Peppers and asparagus.
So the vegetables, right? And so just know that even though we're including, the yogurt parfait at the very end, this is a lifestyle change that we've made after weight loss surgery, right? And so we don't like to focus on desserts or snacks or things like that. However, it's a lifestyle change. This is not a diet. And so you guys are totally on point here. So the protein, then a little bit of vegetable, and then at the end, then we'll have maybe a little bit of a carb of some sort. You still get to taste it, you still get to enjoy it, but it's not the majority of your meal, right? Because the majority of it you've already eaten, and you're pretty full by the end anyway. So I think that's the beauty of it, is with weight loss surgery, you can eat what you want. It's just that you're being very mindful as far as the order in which you're eating it, right?
Okay. So we're prepping out sweet potatoes, and this is also something, these days you can go to Publix and they've got pre-prepped vegetables. Now they cost more. Anytime someone puts their hands on a food item, it costs more money, right? That's one way to think about it. So, but if you're in a pinch for time and you're really trying to stick to your program, that's a thing that you can get into some different vegetable items just because the fact that they're already pre-prepped for you. That's kind of a nice thing. Like I said, though, the price goes up. So it's just one of those things. But if you don't have time, you can still make a nice healthy option out of that. So that's good. So what I'm about to do is just season up some chicken breast and throw that in the oven, get that going. And then we'll work on the other stuff. Yeah. Anybody have any questions so far? No? Everybody's good?
The recipe card for the chicken breast says sautéed, but because we are limited with space to cook it, we're gonna go ahead and do it in the oven. But that's just another technique for you. I
So-
like, oh,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, I was just gonna show you a couple different techniques. And the one that I was gonna do is I'll actually hand sear these chicken breasts, and then we're gonna finish them in the oven. So this is kind of a cheap technique that we would use in the big restaurants. Because like when you walk in the door of a restaurant, the chicken's not fully done in the back. So basically what would happen is when your order comes in, that chef starts to kind of prep it. So basically, to get the good flavor profile, you would do like just a little bit of a light saute to kind of brown the chicken breast. But like I said, we're not gonna drown it in oil or anything like that. So I got my chicken breast.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, of course.
Okay, I didn't hear you
Okay,
rather.
no problem.
What was it again about sauteing, sauteing and pan fry, and then you made a comment about blanching, the CC part when you
Sure.
cook food.
So basically I was just describing the different cooking methods. So you got roasting, which everyone's kind of familiar with, right? You just toss something in the oven, would be a good roasting method. Blanching you might use for broccoli, right? Sweet potatoes. Steaming and blanching are going to be, as far as calorie wise, those are going to be the lowest because you're literally cooking your vegetable in the hot boiling water. That's kind of how that works. So what I'm doing with this chicken breast, I poured just a little bit of oil and I salt and peppered it, and then I'm basically just going to let them be friends together. And I'm just going to get the salt and pepper on both sides. So this does a couple things. I don't have to drench the chicken breasts in like a major amount of oil or seasoning. It gets both sides covered.
don't make fun of me if I have to use my whole body to clap these sweet potatoes, but that's what you do when you're this little.
Alright, are we sure this hood vent's gonna be able to handle it? Anybody?
It was on.
It's on?
It's
Alright.
on, it's just low, I think.
Okay, is there a high setting?
I don't think so, it's just that switch.
Alright,
So
we're about
it
to find
should.
out. Is there a fire alarm in here?
Yes.
It's a fire extinguisher over there.
That's
Yes.
good.
It's been checked.
We actually have two.
When they built this kitchen, they made sure of all that, so, I
We
mean,
actually have two.
Well,
if something goes wrong, it's not our fault.
I'll be gone before the firemen get here. So. Y'all just remember that the chef's name is Giselle, right? Yeah, I'll take the camera with me. Okay.
That's not funny.
That's not funny.
No.
Okay. Sauté pans would be located.
Oh, she's got two sitting over
I got
there.
some rinsed over there.
There we go.
I mean, those are the biggest ones I found.
Right. So once again, we talked about pan frying and sautéing. And one of my grandmothers was a big time cook. She had 7 kids, grew up on a farm, the whole 9 yards. And almost every time I would see her, she would say, Clint, one day I'm gonna have to get you to show me the sauté. Because it's not a cooking method that people used to use at home. So anyways, like I said, a little bit of oil goes a long way. And you can tell when the pan is hot, I just put my hand right over it. And when it feels uncomfortable, you're ready to cook. What about a pair of
Right.
that pair will work right there. I'll use the pink pair. So another thing to remember when you're cooking at home would be keep your work area organized and cleaned. Okay? There's a term that the French use called mise en place. MISEENPLACE.
Everything in its place?
Everything in its place. So right now we do not
I
have
remember
everything in its
something
place.
from cooking school.
But basically what I would refer to is right now when she's cutting these sweet potatoes, the only thing she has on that cutting board are the sweet potatoes. And that's a big mistake that a lot of people make at home is they'll have all kinds of clutter around your workspace. So that's just, it keeps you organized. Also, it's about timing, right? So like, you know, now I've got this saute pan going. I'm waiting for it to get hot. She's working these sweet potatoes, and that's we're getting in the right direction. But timing, like I said, we're kind of going with the thing that takes the longest. So chicken breast, typically, 350 for 30 minutes is the magic time and temperature. 350, you know, unless you get a little brave, you can go higher and faster and all those kind of things. But roughly 30 minutes for 350 will cook just about anything you need to. Like I said, if you're gonna par, what we would call par bake or par cook, like on these chicken breasts, I just want to brown them up to give a better flavor profile. Basically, that's why I'm doing it. So I'm just gonna once again keep myself a little bit organized. We're gonna test out the new hood button here. Got a couple going there. While we're doing that, I'll go ahead and skip to the next step. We have a sheet tray, possibly.
Yes, we do.
Awesome. There we go. Will that fit in that oven that we've got?
It's enough.
We have a smaller. I've done this before. Can you tell? Right. How good that can be. It's a nice sheet tray. It just doesn't fit.
Right.
I've never tried, right? I've never tried.
What about kitchen shears? What about this guy?
Kitchen shears?
We'll use this little parchment knife to work.
Is that what those are?
Yeah, scissors.
Okay,
I haven't seen those around.
So next I'm going to prep the asparagus. Or in Spanish, asparagustos.
Can you verify that, Giselle?
That is
expression on her face.
That is not my Spanish, at least. Asparagus. It almost sounds like you're sneezing.
Like I said, Giselle will be running this. She'll be in here making her asparagus jokes by herself. Anyway, so asparagus. There are multiple types. They all have the same flavor profile. Once again, try new things. Variety is the spice of life, folks. They've got white asparagus, purple asparagus, black asparagus, green asparagus. They've got giant asparagus. They've got all kinds of different types. Don't buy the same things. Mix it up. We challenge ourselves in my house to try new things, especially when they're in season. So one of the big rules that when I first met my wife, she hated. Thank you. She hated asparagus because she was like, half of it's just so tough you can't chew it up. Well, it's because in the restaurant world, we cut off the first inch on the end. That's why it's so. And that part, sometimes in a restaurant you might use that for a soup or something like that. But for this purpose, we're just gonna whack it off at the end and then move on down the road.
What do you think about the snapping method for the asparagus?
Like I said, it's all about knife cuts, and it's all about getting you used to processing your own food. I meant to lead into that earlier when I was talking about the food processor. Someone asks me all the time, like, what kind of food processor do you have in your house? This one right here. So that's kind of what I was going to get in. That way I could kind of teach multiple things at one time. So knife skills, like I talked about the fancy chef buddy of mine that's got 24 restaurants and he's big time on the news and all the time. I would say with this asparagus, cutting the end off and getting the edible portions prepped would be the bulk of it. And then I can show you one other thing that is important with your knife cuts is the way you grip what you're cutting. So basically, we've all been blessed with this magic thumb on the end, and that's how we grip things, right? So the fingers are actually going to be the arch, okay? So when I'm cutting, when you see chefs on TV that are cutting really fast, you're like, wow, that chef can cut really fast. It's because the opposite hand is actually doing the majority of the work. So basically what you do is you kind of crown your fingers and hold your vegetables in place. And then when you bring your knife down, your knife is actually, for all intents and purposes, it's teetering and rocking back and forth on the front of my hand. So my fingers are never in any danger of getting cut. And not like yours, not like my mom's. But like I would just say that 15 years and working in a dozen kitchens, I've only maybe cut my hand twice. It's because I followed that rule. And the 2 times that I cut my hand, I was helping someone out or I was moving too fast, and those were things that got me injured. So basically, we got those cut, and Giselle's gonna finish those up for me, and I'm gonna go back over and check my chicken. So I just want to brown them up a little bit, and we're not quite there yet. I apologize, but we're in good shape. So she's just gonna grab like that first thing, and she's gonna use her left hand with the archer fingers, and she's gonna use her thumb to hold those in place, and she's just gonna nicely done. Sweet potatoes are boiling. There we go.
We might not even have to make all of it.
I think you're right. I think that's
So that's
good right
okay.
there, yeah. And then next she's going to grab a clove of garlic out and show us the proper way to do that. So one thing that I will tell you, like I talked about those pre-cooked or pre-prepped vegetables, something that I do at home, because like I said, I've got a 6 and a 2-year-old, so it's like they're not really eating what I'm eating. So for my wife and I, when I'll do a small salad. Usually I won't even do a carb anymore, just because unless it's for the kids and it's left over. But we're like I said, we're all kind of health conscious, exercise, small portions, whatever we're doing. But when it comes to things like pre-prepped vegetables, garlic is one. Believe it or not, it actually comes in a tube like toothpaste, and it's fresh garlic, and it saves all the time. So notice I put her on garlic duty because I didn't want to get the garlic hands. So she's going to show you, and you can take it
So
out.
it comes like a toothpaste?
Comes in like a toothpaste. So literally, when you're about to cook your stuff, you just put a teaspoon or how much ever you need out, and you don't have to do all this work. So basically, garlic comes in this giant clove, right? And then on the end, you'll see the root part. If you were going to cook all this at once, you can actually just cut the root off the end of it, and then the peel will come straight off. But we don't need that much since we're only cooking for a few people. So she's just going to do one, and she got to do the cool chef thing, and we didn't talk about it. So do one more.
Okay,
so
okay.
So this is the fun part.
Right.
She puts her knife sideways and smash. That's the cool part. And
Not
then you get
smash too hard.
Not too hard. But then we got to take the peel, just slides right off, and it's garlic's a little slimy, but it's one of those things when it gets in your pores, you got it for a day, which is okay. But I can teach you there's a trick for that, and it's lemon juice. So the lemon juice is good for a couple things that we're cooking today. One of them is asparagus. I put it just a little bit over the top, and it takes some of the smell out, and it also takes kind of that bitter taste out. Lemon juice also does that for spinach. If you ever want to saute spinach, it's a very fast cooking vegetable, or green rather. But the cool part about it is when you as soon as your pan gets hot and you put that spinach in, it goes really quick. So you kind of need to have your cooking tongs like there to kind of stir it up. So salt and pepper in that tube that I was telling you about. I'm telling you, it's changed my life. But do a little bit of that, and then right before it's done cooking, just a little bit of lemon juice takes out the tartness of spinach. So that's kind of the trick. Let's see what else we got going. So she's minced her garlic, and we're ready to kind of move along. These chicken breasts have got a little brown on them, and you will notice the difference when you cook chicken breast in the oven by itself versus whether when you brown them up just a little bit.
It's hard to slice with gloves on, so I apologize. Something that I like to do a lot is this process can be time consuming. So I buy a whole 5 head of garlic kind of stuff, and it takes a bit to peel all that garlic, but you throw it in a food processor, throw in some olive oil, process it, put it in a jar, a glass jar, keep it airtight, and it lasts a really long time. The oil preserves it for a while, so anytime I need garlic, I just scoop on the thing and throw it, and it saves me a lot of time.
Piquito ajo.
Ajo? Sí, un poquito de ajo.
A little bit of garlic. Is
Yes.
that pronunciation?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, little tricks, but if you don't get out and try new things, you won't stumble into these things. Something else that's good, it's a good thing that I've been doing for 20 years at home. When it comes to marinating things, that way your flavor profiles will be more. So like chicken breast, if we have the time, you can even find them at the grocery store. Sometimes buy one get one, which is kind of nice because that's the only thing I use them for is like The salad dressings, a couple times a week at your grocery store, they put them on buy one, get one. So salad dressings are really great marinades because they've got what in them? They've got everything. They've got oil, they've got vinegars, they've got garlic, salt, and pepper, herbs. So as long as you buy the right ones, they're perfect marinades. That way you don't even have to go into the fridge and grab 5 things. Grab a Ziploc, toss a little bit of salad dressing and salt and pepper, toss it up, throw it back in the fridge for 30 minutes, and you're ready to go. So one of the big misconceptions when it comes to marinating, whether it's pork or beef or chicken, whatever it happens to be, typically a half an hour to an hour is really enough if you want to do that to give yourself a new flavor. And once again, that alleviates the need for a sauce, right? Because you don't need that because you've got the extra flavor. Also, when you're working with the less expensive beef cuts, like you'll find in the grocery store, like not the big monster steaks, but like just the thin strip steaks that are also leaner cuts, the marinades are good for that, and they kind of tender it up. So she's going to show you next, and we're just going to use, and one thing I was going to say that we didn't get preloaded because it's our first time, but once this kitchen gets rolling, she'll have the things that she knows what she's doing, and then everything will kind of work a little smoother. So I keep, once again, things in place in your kitchen. Everybody's kitchen's different, and I'm constantly reorganizing mine. Every kitchen that I've ever worked in, and mine too, which drives the people that I live with crazy because they go, "Where is it? You know, I've moved it because it's better over here." You know, kind of like how a doctor keeps their operating tools here, and a mechanic has a. It's the same. You know, when you're in there cooking, set yourself up for success. Some people don't even think about it, but where do you keep your pots and pans? Where do you keep your plates? Where do you keep your bowls? All these tools will help you enjoy the experience more. So my point was, in one of these cabinets, there's a glass container that had a little nozzle on it. I saw it somewhere. Here it is. Okay. So one good thing that I like to do, like we talked about the garlic trick, I pick up a couple of these inexpensive containers to keep my olive oil in. That way when you go to use it, you don't pour, because olive oil is expensive. That's what I kind of avoided saying earlier because I don't want to scare you off from the nicer olive oil, but the nicer olive oil is better for you. So we're just going to see if we can't pour that in. You do it or you got it?
I can do it.
So basically that was just what I was going to say was like, that's another little trick to not use as much, and it's less mess, and like I said, it's expensive, so we don't want to use a lot to start with anyways, right? I mean,
It looks pretty on the counter.
Plus it looks nice on the counter, and it's kind of...
It does.
And you can put herbs in it, right?
Yeah, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
That so it took me I don't want to exaggerate, but it took me 2 hours and I don't know, 2 hours and almost 40 minutes to get here because traffic was nuts. But that being said, I had a lot of time to think about what I was going to tell everybody tonight. And one of the things that I've gotten out of the habit of in my house is because, you know, life happens and kids happen. But it's popular these days, and you know, herb gardens are popular, and you can keep them in your kitchen. You can keep them on those little planters outside if you've got space, which will lead me into a whole nother sermon. And that sermon would be, whenever you're cooking, you want to use the freshest ingredients possible at all times. Whether it's herbs, fruits, vegetables, oils, whatever you can, you constantly want to be pushing yourself to use the best ingredients. The human body is is an amazing machine. It heals itself, repairs itself. It will give you warning signs when things are wrong. Human body is pretty awesome, and I sometimes will compare it to a really nice automobile. You wouldn't put the cheapest fluids in your car because you want your car to go a long way. Same thing with our bodies. We want to put the best ingredients in our bodies as we can. Enjoy eating, which is kind of why I talked about who eats alone psychologically. When you eat with someone else, it's a more enjoyable experience, especially if you've got someone chatty like me with you, because then I can chat you up the whole time we're eating, and it'll be a better experience. Okay, so now that we've got our olive oil transferred, we're going to do with our asparagus just a little bit, just right over the top, and we don't have to cover the whole thing. It's not a marinade. One thing that you'll see a lot of chefs do, and then some people wonder why, some people don't. Some people, it never crosses your mind. But when you see chefs grab salt and pepper, this is something else that I would say is, when I have salt and pepper, this is the pro tip. When I have salt and pepper at home, I mix them together. And the reason I do that is I don't have to reach for two spices at once. So you can keep a little container, and you know, this is, my grandmother grew up in the Depression, so she never threw anything away. She would have containers, and you would think you were grabbing something, and that's not what was in there. Because she was using it as Tupperware, or whatever she was using it for. But she would also do it, the smart way for a lot of really useful things. We can go ahead and pull that off and toss that in the oven if you would, please. And then we'll be a step closer. So remember earlier I said 350 for 30 minutes, chicken breast will cook. I've got this oven set a little high at 425. We're going to be able to watch it. But since we cheated and browned our chicken breast, roll that one over for me one more time. There we go. Yeah, just put it in the tray face up. There we go. Perfect. Excellent. We'll teamwork this and I'll get that one for you. Just turn right around. You're good. Nicely done. All right. So that I did skip a step when I did the chicken. I was going to say you always want to start your chicken or fish skin side. So chicken you would want to do skin side down. So if it did have the skin, you would notice it. But like on a clean chicken breast, you would notice that it's the smoother side. It doesn't have the texture, for example. So you'd always want to do that one first. That way, when it goes in the oven, the pretty side bakes up, right? And also the whatever type of fat possibly that's left on that protein cooks down. So when you do a turkey, think about how that's done. It's always the top side up, right? So because the back side doesn't have the good parts. If it's barbecue, and you always put the fat part up. If it's a steak, it's all kind of just the way that you think. Anyway, so we got those are probably gonna need another minute, I bet. And this is the one from the chicken, right? So we can put that guy in the sink because we're done with him. So we got the salt done, and we got a little bit of olive oil, and we're just gonna go right over the top. That brought me back to what I was gonna tell you about the salt and pepper thing. So keep it mixed. It's just that it's a little pro tip. Just that way you don't have to go, where's the salt and the pepper? And this is really just for cooking. Don't walk this out of the dining room table and be like, Mom's lost it. Mom's completely lost it. She went to one cooking class and she thinks she's Emerald Lagasse, right? She's bamming everybody. So basically the reason for this, we're gonna do it.
What's your proportion of salt to pepper?
Oh my.
50-50. 50-50, yeah. I mean and that leads me to something else that I'm gonna finish. But the reason for this high angle, what you see on TV and restaurants and everything else, when you disperse your salt and pepper from a high angle, it forces it to cover the product better. That's all that is. It's not really the showing off part. Now Emerald likes the band, but that's Emerald. We love Emerald for that, right? I mean, anyway. And then Giselle's got some fresh garlic for us, and then I'm gonna let her do another fun one. We're taking it back to Culinary Skills Class 101.
Yeah.
She even got to say mise en place today.
I'm glad I remembered that.
Yeah, so she's going to scoop that up and just right over the top.
Yeah, when I was in school, if we didn't have all our mise en place in place, chefs would give us a mean look. So pretty strict culinary arts program, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
We had to be ironed before we went into the room. And if you weren't ironed your chef coat, they would turn you around and ask you to go to your dorm. Oh.
So she's going to show you, at first she's going to show you how to roll this lemon on a cutting board. Anytime you use lemons or limes, you roll them a little bit. So you try to put a lot of weight on it, and that does a couple things. It loosens up the citrus on the inside, but it opens up the fragrance part and the skin of the peel. So if you're ever going to use a microplaner, or like the zest of a vegetable, you always want to kind of rough them up a little bit, and that just makes it easier and easier process. All right, now she's going to cut that lemon in half, and we only really need 1/2 since we're only doing a little bit. And then when you squeeze a lemon, she's going to do it right. You squeeze it over your other hand, that way you can catch the seed. Little things. You got to see people look at me when I start to crack eggs. Oh my God, it's moving so fast. I mean, I cooked thousands of eggs over the years. So she's good. She's got her seeds, and we can move on to the next one. So our asparagus will go in the oven. All right.
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
I've found that since my bariatric surgery, I have a real sensitivity to spices.
Right.
So things like garlic and all of that will just turn my system upside down.
Right.
If you can't tolerate that stuff, I mean, basically, just olive oil and salt and pepper.
Olive oil and salt and pepper will be your friend.
Okay.
And you know, if the pepper aggravates you, just leave it out. I mean, you know, you can customize it to your own personal needs and wants, but you know, the fresh herbs and things like that will always be your friends. And then, you know, Giselle was going to head that direction earlier when we were talking about olive oil, maybe with you could put herbs in your olive oil to flavor those these days, and instead of paying 3 times the amount of money. Plus, you can make pestos, which is just really just basil, and you know, usually when I say that, someone goes, "Well, I'm allergic to pine nuts." You can leave it out. I always did, just because there's always one person in the crowd that's got a nut allergy, and then I can surprise them and say it's okay, I didn't put the pine nuts in.
And they're expensive.
And they're really expensive.
No, I was just gonna say the herbs would probably be the better thing to tolerate at
Absolutely.
first. Yeah.
Instead of spices, just go.
Right.
Let's see.
Would you okay with lemon juice? Because I think the lemon juice makes it taste good too.
I haven't tried it with lemon juice, but
That would be good too.
found that anything spicy really upsets me.
We'll get a few more minutes on the sweet potatoes, and we'll be good to go.
I feel like lemon juice adds a lot of flavor to a lot of things. I add it to broccoli. I don't know if you like to do
Well,
that,
that's nice.
but
That's good.
yes. Well,
I got a
similar
6
like the
hey.
asparagus.
I've got a 6-year-old, so it's got to have cheese on it. So it's good to eat it, but that's neither here nor there. So next I would say,
Probably.
so we're good to go on that. I'm just gonna tidy up here this real quick, and then we'll get on these peppers. I can figure out how to work this faucet.
Yeah, it's a fancy faucet.
We're learning it.
Okay, so getting back to the knife skills application of the class. So bell peppers, they're always available in the grocery store. You can cook them a bunch of different ways. You can use them to make sauces that are, you know, I don't want to say calorie free because they got the nutritionist over here that's looking over my shoulder, but you know, they're low calorie, they're heavy in flavor. You'll notice that when you do the different colors, we did this on purpose because we're talking about making your plates pretty, right? So the red ones always have the most flavor, and then the green ones have the least amount of flavor.
Those are rice green.
This is kind of neat. A lot of people don't even think about it when they're buying peppers, but when you get the 3-pack, that's usually the way to go because you get the color. But anyway, so when I cut my bell peppers, once again, when I grip, I'm using my fingers as an arch, right? So there's no risk of me getting injured or cut. So I take the bottom off first, and then the top part. This usually confuses a lot of people where you got the stem, and I just cut the whole part off, and then you'll see the stem. And I got lucky just because I was teaching a class. The stem will fall right off, and then the part that I don't want in the center that's got the inside of the seeds, I just get over my trash can and then I'll just pop that whole piece out. And then the inside I'm just left with the rib part, and then I'll deal with that next. I don't throw these parts away typically. I don't like to waste, and so I keep the ring in the end, and I'll show you what I do with those. So basically, with your bell pepper, and then you break it down and fold it over. And once again, you keep your cutting board nice and organized, and with the little rinds, you can just lay your knife nice and flat, and it'll go right over. Because that part you want to take out. And that's kind of the trick on those guys. And then on the end pieces, I'll do the same thing. And something else with bell peppers that's important is you always want to put the outside down as your knife goes through to help you cut. Because if you do it the other way, and I'll actually demonstrate. I don't know if you can really hear it, but there's a little bit of a snap with the vegetable because that's the toughest part of the vegetable. As opposed to the other side, it's nice and soft. So for this one, we're just for the ends. I like to dice those. I didn't do the best job as far as a small dice, but that's okay. Anyways, so on the large part of the bell pepper, I usually will turn those long ways and then do little strips, kind of like fajita strips or fajitas. Someone wants to critique my Spanish.
Say it, Giselle.
Fajita. I'm Puerto Rican, so it'll have a swing to it.
Oh, spicy. Okay, so that's kind of the deal with the bell peppers, and then same thing with the other end. One cool thing that a lot of chefs do in restaurants, because especially when peppers are in season, they will make a coulis out of bell peppers. And a coulis, all that really is, you would take your bell peppers either on the stove or on the grill, and you would literally put them on the fire and kind of burn them up a little bit, and the black part is actually good. That's adding the flavor. The trick to doing that, since we've got an electric stove, I'm not going to attempt that in here. But essentially, what you do is once you char it up on the outside, and you can use any color, char it up on the outside, and if you believe it or not, if you go over a cold water sink, and it'll just wipe right off, and then you're just left with the good part. Basically, after you do that, you would just put it in a food processor or a blender, and add a little bit of olive oil and salt and pepper, and it'll literally just liquefy. And now you've got a nice flavorful sauce for your dish, and it's just bell pepper. You know what I mean? So once again, low calorie but not calorie free. But it adds to the dish. So with these guys, do we have a clean bowl?
Yes.
Awesome. Excellent. So we're just gonna throw.
Are nut oils like walnut oil as good as olive oil?
Well, they're just different, is what I would say. And once again, you need to consult the calorie count and that kind of stuff, and the sodium for all your different stuff.
Okay.
That's something that I know is a concern for everybody. But like I said, when it comes to olive oil, the extra virgin is the best. And like a lot of people, once again, we were talking about marketing when it comes to foods. And a lot of times you'll see these days where it says like, low calorie olive oil or low this and low that. And I've seen some, news shows like 60 Minutes or whatever, where they literally will talk about olive oil companies are counterfeited overseas, where you're not actually getting olive oil. It's like 10% olive oil and 90% water. So you're like, what are you actually getting? That's what I'm saying. I want you to kind of research what you're putting into your bodies. Extra virgin olive oil is the best one. Once again, I use less than a tablespoon on the whole thing that we've done here tonight. So that's kind of the thing. So getting your bell peppers, and this is one of those fun things where you can just kind of make sure that they look nice. That way, when you saute them up, they'll be in good shape. These guys, and we're gonna do another color just because Giselle was nice enough to go out and get our vegetables for us. Wouldn't it have been funny though if I'd have just reached under and grabbed a bowl of pressed peppers and I'd been like, oh, that's what they do on the TV. But they do a lot of things on TV that irk me the opposite way. Like, you'll notice when I cook that chicken, I wash my hands before and then I change those gloves 3 times. On TV, they never do that, and then the guy goes over and grabs that rag and like wipes his chicken hands off, and I'm like, the chicken hands, Anyway, so our sweet potatoes are just about ready. Our oven's going to need a few more minutes for our chicken. I'm going to pull the brine off of these bell peppers. And then
if I had a bigger cutting board, I would help with that.
We're probably good, don't you think? With
Yeah,
just these 2?
we're not going to need
Yeah, so we could probably, once again, we're talking about timing and what takes the longest. We got the 2 things that are the most time consuming out of the way, the sweet potatoes and the chicken. So now maybe we can cheat and start our little dessert cups, if you would like. So we only need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cups.
Yeah.
8 cups, and then we're going to go ahead and, and once again, like I told you, you can put these in little mason jars. I went through a phase where I was really obsessed with mason jars, because you can use them for so many things. You can use them for iced coffee, you can use them for yogurt parfaits, you can use them to store a lot of different things. One thing that's really popular in the professional kitchens is agua fresca. Agua fresca basically is just water that's been flavored. So once again, we talked about flavoring our oils, right? Like fresh herbs. You can do that with water, and it's essentially you're taking like I get the big mason jars, the really big, the biggest ones you can get. And basically, whoever the first person in that day gets the coffee going in the kitchen and things like that. But to get the fresh water for because it's hot in there and everyone's thirsty by the end of the day, someone will make a batch of agua fresca, whether it's strawberries, whatever fruit is readily available. And once again, with calories and things like that, it's low calorie. It tastes good. It's good for you because once again you can put herbs and fresh fruits, whatever you want to do.
So, Chef, you were going to tell me that you had a little trick for this?
Yeah.
For chopping this?
So I noticed that this kitchen has got a lot of stuff, and I didn't have the chance to really get in here and play with all of it yet. But the food processor, I don't know, for some reason didn't work. I don't know if there's a sensor or a button that I didn't see. I've never used that brand. But this one is just a really small one. I've got one at home that's called a NutriBullet. They're like 30, 40 bucks on Amazon. They're really popular. So this one is basically when you go into, does anyone have a nut allergy?
That's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
And so the granola component, we're only gonna put it over those that are closer to the year mark after, post-surgery or after the year. So just let us know and we'll make sure to prepare just the yogurt and the strawberry part for those that can't have the granola component. But this granola, I thought it would be a good idea. I bought a, Nature Valley high protein granola, and I thought, okay, it's high protein, but it's still granola, so it's high carb. And for our populations, bariatric population, we have to be careful about the carbohydrates and the sugars. So I thought maybe if we do like half and half chopped almonds and granola, it gives you a bit of that granola flavor, but it cuts back half the amount of carbs and sugar. So you will see that with the portion in the recipe card, I put the nutrition information of what the sugar comes up to after mixing it with the almonds. So really only 3 grams of carbohydrate for the 1 tablespoon of the product. Okay, so I thought it was a smart way for patients that maybe want to have that, you know, and try to make it fit better to your meal plan.
Yeah, so that's good. So this is similar to that NutriBullet, the one that I was telling you about. And the cool thing, one of the cool things that I like about the NutriBullet is, let's say that it comes with like 4 of these plastic containers. 2 of them have handles on there. So if you needed to make a little smoothie, or once again a yogurt parfait, you could do it all in that same dish. And they come with lids that screw on. So once I prep it, I can put it right in the fridge, and later on I can enjoy it. So this one, we've got nuts and we've got some almonds. So basically when you screw it on, the mechanism on the inside goes right on top of this blender, and it's just got a couple little divots where it goes in, and shake it up a little bit. But I mean, could you imagine if you could just put a top on it and throw it in the fridge? If it was something, you know, besides just chopped nuts. Yep. So next we're gonna do. We're gonna show you. We did diced sweet potatoes. So next we're gonna drain those guys out, and then we're just gonna do. We're just gonna mash them up, the old-fashioned way.
I got a masher because I didn't see one here.
Yeah, it's a good thing you did.
This is mine. I need to bring it home with me.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So
we mash. Since I'm Puerto Rican, I love plantains, and sometimes I have it as a healthy breakfast starch. So the sweeter plantain, I boil it and give it a mash, and have that with some boiled eggs. And for those that have never had plantains and maybe are a bit skeptical about it, you can talk to me. There's a way to make those ingredients fit. It's all about the portion size, so you know that starchy component is only about a 1/4 cup in the plate. And the plantains here, I've gotten really good ones. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to get nice plantains, but so if you're ever curious about vegetables like that, let me know, because I'm from Puerto Rico. So
where's a good place to get plantains?
Well, I'm getting mine in Aldi right now, and they're ripening really good. I bought a bunch, and only 2 of them have like dried out. So plantains have this weird thing that as they ripen, they turn from green to yellow. Sometimes they kind of like dry out and don't ripen, and you can feel it. You can touch it that they're hard, and so those are no good. You don't want to cook those.
What would you describe the consistency and flavor to? Would you say like maybe in between a potato?
No, the flavor, I'm gonna say when it's sweet, it's close to a banana. When it's green, it's hard to compare. I'm gonna say probably closer to potato, but not really. I think it's unique.
I said potato banana first, didn't I? She cheated. That's all right. Anyways, so
I was thinking sweet.
She was thinking sweet. Sweet potato almost, but not the color. So anyways, we got sweet potatoes that are ready. We diced those up and boiled them. just like you would regular mashed potatoes. I've got this is called a wok. Basically, this is used in a lot of Asian cooking, but it's just mainly because I use my saute pan to brown my chicken up. So we're gonna do a little bit of wok and roll here. So we, well, you know, it's you're getting every bit of it tonight. So we've got, what type of yogurt did we buy?
This is the 000 oikos.
Yeah.
So
Tell them about the taste testing though, Giselle.
oh yes, so
She made us taste test y'all to get you the best flavored yogurt.
right. So I did a blind taste test in our department, and I had everyone taste and tell me which one was their favorite, which one they didn't like so much. And the top 3 were the Oikos 000, the Light and Fit Greek, but that one's got significant more sugar, and the Carb Master yogurt. Surprisingly, because I'm like, Carb Master must taste really, really bad, but it got good points. So I went with the 000 because it's 0 added sugars, zero artificial sweeteners, and 0% fat. So for our patients, they need to be really careful about the sugar intake.
Right.
For those that are close post-op, they can get this dumping syndrome, and it's very, very bad. So you want to be careful about the sugar, and this helps keep that in check.
So what are we doing to counterbalance the lack of natural sweetness? Strawberries. See?
Strawberries.
So that's kind of the idea is, you know, natural sugars versus artificial, you know, sugars. Those are the things that I kind of want you to think about. Like I was telling you about, spend your time in that produce and vegetable aisle. Stay out of that middle where they got all the processed bag stuff. It's usually not better for you.
Sorry.
Okay.
I'm gonna blend the granola to make it finer so that we can mix these two together. So it's not gonna be this like chunky hard granola to bite on. It's more gonna be like a flavor component into it.
Should be something to pour that out. So once again, the difference between pan frying and sautéing, even though I'm using a wok, it's really just a sauté. So just using, once again, the little cheap method. That way I'm not using a half a cup of olive oil. I remember when I went through culinary school, nutritionists would come in and tell us, you know, olive oil, a cup of olive oil has how many calories?
Oh, I don't know.
Like 750 to
I look at the
900
nutrition
calories,
facts
something like that.
label.
Yeah. So I think olive oil per cup has like 900 calories per cup, which is kind of frightening, but that's what I was telling you. That's why I just use it just a little bit. So
Exactly.
you know, a little bit does go a long way. Plus, you don't want your food to taste heavy and weighed down and soggy. You don't want that. So once again, high temperature, fast cooking, light on the olive oil, and salt and pepper, and then once again, the heavy spices, if they don't agree with you, just stay away from them. You know, honestly, with a little bit of olive oil, I may not even need the salt and pepper. Honestly, sometimes. Yeah.
Sauteing is high heat and fast cooking. Frying.
So frying is completely submerged in grease,
Okay.
right? And you would need to cook it for a little bit longer. Like for example, like when you would cook like fried chicken. Let's just use fried chicken for it because that's what everyone thinks of when they think of frying. You know, you're gonna that chicken's gonna be dredged and floured, and then you're literally gonna submerge it into that oil,
Okay.
and it may sit there for 20-30 minutes. Whereas sautéing, I'll be done with these peppers and just.
And sauteing is a quicker way.
It's a quicker way. It's a healthier way.
Does it infuse the flavor of the?
Not so much the flavor profile, a little bit,
Okay.
but it's just a healthier option because we're using way less oil. But it's also one of the last things that I do when I cook, because like I told you, I kind of cheat and go backwards. So like my chicken, since I've been chatting with you guys, it's been working in here. I browned it in the pan to give you the flavor profile. And once again, that's not. I don't want to call that a. I don't want to call that a saute. That's more of a braise, or with the meat. You know, you're not really 100% compared to saute, but it's still not very many. Or it's not a lot of oil.
Yeah, do you think that maybe because of the limited size, the pan was maybe a bit small to get that nice browning in it?
Yeah, sure. Plus it's a non-stick pan.
Yeah.
So non-stick pans, you're not gonna get as much of the caramelization in your meats. But we're gonna live and learn, and we're gonna push forward, and we're learning some stuff while we're chatting and having a good time, and we'll have a good meal out of it.
And that's the whole idea about cooking, you know. Before I went to culinary school, it wasn't because I was a great cook in the house and I wanted to be this like fantastic chef. I grew up with single mom, and she did what she could, and oftentimes I ate mashed potatoes from a box, and I really did not know how to cook. But I knew that my career, my long-term career, was around food. I wasn't 100% sure that it was being a registered dietitian. But when I found out about Johnson & Wales University, how it offers the culinary program and you could do the nutrition component, I think this is the best route for me. And even though I did that culinary arts program, I'm still learning, and I still, you know, sometimes get nervous when I cook for people at home. But I learned, you know what, if you don't try, if you don't cook, you're never gonna get better at it.
So we're gonna go with the wok here, just a little bit of oil, like I said, and you know, now that it's settled on the bottom of the pan, I would say I probably have less than a teaspoon. So remember, teaspoon is the smaller one, tablespoon's the bigger one. So I've got my peppers ready to go. I'm just gonna toss those in.
You know, I was gonna chop these up, but I guess we could put them straight in the processor as well.
You could, or you could just rough. How about you show them a rough chop, just to show them another skill.
Right.
So with this, I don't need a tool. I'm just kind of slowly bringing it back towards myself. And you can tell when whatever you're cooking needs to be sautéed. It needs to be flipped. You know, you let it go for a minute, and then you just bring it back towards yourself.
So for a rough chop, I like to place my hand here so that the tip stays in one position, and then I just move the back of the knife left and right. Go all the way to the left, put everything together again, and do it again and again until it's that size that you're looking for. And in case you're wondering why am I using thawed frozen strawberries, is because I noticed that lately the strawberries I've had in the grocery store haven't been really, really good, and we wanted to make this recipe for you, and I thought, you know what, sometimes when fruit are not in season, the best route to go is to get frozen. One time in a food demo, I had a fruit parfait with thawed blueberries. So frozen blueberries that you thaw them, and it's really awesome because the color of the blueberries, that juice, mixes in with the yogurt, and it looks so nice. So I thought that this would be a good way to still do it, and it's flavorful.
That's good. So sweet potatoes, I let them in the pot for a reason. If you have a colander or a strainer at home, that's the way to do it. But
I haven't seen one here.
she hasn't seen one here?
No.
I assumed that there
There
wasn't one.
has to be one.
And I was going to show you once again the cheap method that I use. It's not always the best one. Sometimes my wife hates to see me do it because she knows I'm going to spill stuff.
Yeah.
So you have to break a few eggs to make an omelet. Which will be in the next class Giselle teaches. She's going to teach Omelets 101. All about the best omelets.
Yep.
That's not a bad idea.
One of her specialties is the Texas omelet. It's got a lot of different components.
What's the Texas omelet?
It could be anything you want it to be.
Oh. Okay.
You know, honestly, I just do it this way because I love a one pot dish when I'm at home. The less dishes, because I'm the one that does the cooking.
That's the way my mother used to
Yep,
do
so I
it.
just grab the top, and kind of go right over the sink.
Yeah. I think that's what my grandmother used to do, the way we used to do. That's the way we used to do before they came up with college.
That's right.
You gotta have strong hands for that. That's a good thing about cooking too. Even doing dishes. I don't like to do dishes, but they told me once that it keeps your hands strong, and I'm like, all right, so that gives me a reason to do it.
So these peppers are basically sautéed. Like I said, you know, in a restaurant, you know, whether it's a fancy restaurant or whatever, when someone comes in and orders that dish, this would already be prepped, and I would have, you know, maybe onions and peppers going here, and then I would finish your dish there, and then when I put it together, that's going to be kind of the fun part. So like I said, these guys are done.
I would like to
Sure.
peppers that
they're hard to get soft enough, to just, you know, the skin on them. kind of
Sure.
hard. So, slicing them thinner or.
Sure.
cook-
Also, that thing that I mentioned earlier about fire roasting them, and that skin will come right off as soon as it hits the cold water. It'll just slide right off. Plus, you get an extra flavor profile there. So with these guys, that's in good shape.
With bariatric surgery, I have found the skin is high, a lot of nutrients in it. The skin on the grape, apple, different things, do not. I don't think it's psychological, I think
Sure.
it's a lot, you know, physical. It's hard to digest and to, so that, what you're talking about with roasting, take the skin off.
Yeah, I mean, it takes it right off. Plus, you get the added benefit of no seasoning with the fire roasted part. So that's nice. So, the sweet potatoes are here.
My mother used to boil green peppers to get the skin off. Does
There you
that
go. You
take-
can do that same thing. Yeah.
Does that take nutrients out of it?
You know, I don't want to say that it takes nutrients out because you're in the cooking process now. Like, I think scientifically it probably does a little bit, but then again,
Right.
it's like if you can't digest the rind, what are you gonna do?
Right.
This is a very interesting tool that I like to call the masher. It's low tech, but it works.
It's amazing.
There's also a mixer down there, but I didn't want to leave that dirty and have someone else for literally just a couple cups of sweet potatoes. So our recipe for sweet potatoes, Giselle, is, let me guess, a little bit of salt and pepper,
And
maybe cinnamon.
we wanted to put some cinnamon in
Just a
there.
little cinnamon, because we're not going to do butter or anything like that. We're just going to keep it simple. Also, like once you get it, it's a lot of it's kind of a mindset. Once you get in the mindset of eating a certain way, it becomes a lifestyle, and then it just becomes a habit. And then it can be a challenge sometimes when you go out to eat, but you just have to make wise choices for yourself.
Do you guys have any favorite ways of making sweet potato?
I roast them, like
Roast is good.
them.
Yeah, I love roasting.
Plus, you can make sweet potato fries that way.
Yes.
Right.
I'll tell you a trick when you make any kind of fries at home, the baked way. So when you wash them and slice them how you want, put the tray in the oven first, so get the tray nice and hot. Bring it out and then lay your fries on top, cold. That's the other trick with potatoes for fries, is when you wash them, put them back in the water, because if they dry out, they lose that crispness. That's another little trick. So anyways, when I used to work in the big restaurants, it's a very high tempo, fast-paced environment, high stress. Everything's got to be just right or you'll mess it up. But one thing that I just never got into, I've never used measuring spoons in my life. I don't know if I've got the Emeril Lagasse influence from back in the 90s, but he didn't use them either. He just got anyway, so maybe don't follow this, that example that I'm giving you, but typically I'll just kind of go right over the top and get a little even
So
coverage.
it's funny because even though I went to cooking school, I felt like I needed to measure. I felt like I needed to follow the recipe or else it was gonna turn bad. But with practicing, first I started measuring, but then the more I did it, I started to understand the proportions of how much of this and that makes it flavorful. And I've been getting better at eyeballing some of the spices and still getting good flavor. So again, I just feel like it's practice. You just have to keep doing it and doing it, and your hand just learns how to properly season.
That's true. I'm gonna set these right over here.
Giselle, what's the sweetener in that yogurt?
The sweetener is stevia.
Okay. I think about that.
I don't
Yeah.
like aspartame.
I personally just opt out. If it's, I don't like any of the artificial sweeteners.
I prefer to, I would rather have
Just
the,
plain.
But stevia of all of them is natural, right?
Exactly.
It comes from the stevia plant.
I just kind of compare it to what was the one back in the 80s and the 90s.
I'd rather
Yeah.
have,
And then that was the thing, remember? And they said, oh, it's good for you. Now they're like, it's not good for you. Well, this one, I'm like, this one, I'll just stay away from it too. So we're in pretty good shape. She's got strawberries cleaned up. We just need a, there we go.
Oh, so raise hands. How many people can't have the granola
I
bar?
have a question, cause that wasn't a no-no on what they gave us.
She was saying the granola wasn't off limits on the list.
No, it's just that, so nuts it is on the caution side. So some patients may have, when they're 6 months post-op, around that time when they're starting in the solid foods, they might still not be able to digest these properly. So it's not a no-no, it's more of a just be cautious of these.
Have you had them yet? I'd say if you're doing fine with it.
Exactly, it's, yeah. Mm-hmm. No, and when I saw,
Things that I don't tolerate, but.
and the good thing about processing it too is for those that are a bit iffy about trying them for the first time after not eating nuts, processing them already breaks them down a bit so that when you do have it, you don't have to chew as much. So that's the reason I did it this way, just in case there were a lot of people close to that 6 month mark. Oh, it looks so pretty. So a typical fruit parfait, you'll see the granola being a very thick layer. And I think this way, it just gives it a bit of texture and flavor without still keeping the calories on the lower side.
We do have people live, by the way, so I'm just showing them what you got.
Oh, okay, hi. Right. Because really, it's all about balance. And even with healthy foods, you still have to be careful about the portion sizes.
I don't find I get much past my protein. I'm 7 months out from surgery, and I don't get much past the protein. I eat the protein and
yes. Yeah,
maybe
so
1 or 2 bites and that's it.
yeah, and don't feel pressured that you have to eat. We know that this is not physically possible. So just pick and choose what it is that you want to try out, and that's absolutely fine.
What do you think about the George Foreman griller? I'm not supposed to say the brand name, but I use that to grill a lot of times.
Sure.
I'll put something in it. That way I don't have to have any fat with it, but it'll still grill it and it goes fast.
Sure, I know a lot of people that have used them in the past, and like I said, I was recently worked at a college, so all the college kids use it because it's just they can't have it.
Yeah.
But it's just easy, and it's kind of it kind of goes on autopilot. Plus, like the way that the design is, it drains the fat off.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's
I live by
good.
myself, so
Sure.
I'm not cooking for a lot of people anytime.
Sure,
So.
right. That's good. We're just waiting on chicken, and we'll be all set.
So I'm gonna be over here plating whatever is ready to go.
So all right.
Rarely use it during the day.
I think our plates are a little small for that.
So Giselle, one of the issues I have,
She's got a question, Giselle.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Question.
Yes.
So proteins, are, kind of the hardest thing for me, cause I have a swallowing disorder too.
Okay.
And so they have to be a little bit
Chopped off
wet
or wet? Yeah.
or something. So, you know, you can buy like the fat-free gravies and stuff, but they have so many chemicals in them. So what else would you suggest?
Honestly, if that's an issue, I would suggest more like stews. Have you tried stews?
Yeah, I just, you know, to get enough of the protein that's, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it just gets hard.
Because you could control the amount of water that you use in it. You don't have to do it with a lot of water. You could do like a kind of like a drier side stew, so you use less water, but it still gives you some moisture. Doing it in the crock pot makes it so tender that it should be super easy to swallow. If you can tolerate something like a marinara sauce, I don't know if that is troublesome. I know for some patients the acidity of the tomato, but putting a sauce like that is very low calorie. It's just, you know, you can even you can buy some jarred marinara that's doesn't have any sugar added. There's one really good I tried recently in Aldi that has no sugar added, it's organic, and tastes it really good. Or you can make it at home, and that way it's a sauce that adds a non-starchy vegetable to it that's low calorie naturally. So that would be another suggestion. I don't know if any of you that would have a suggestion for her.
What about salsa? You talked about marinara, but
Yeah.
maybe a salsa or
I
even
do like the
Trader.
salsa chicken in either the pressure cooker or the slow crock pot just to make it softer.
Trader Joe's and Aldi will sometimes have like a black bean dip that's in a jar, but it's also very low calorie and low carb. And you only need like maybe half a tablespoon to put, to soften your meat up.
Right, right. And actually, what about beans? Do you do well with beans? I know you said as a sauce, but that can be also your protein source.
Yeah, I'm not a huge bean eater. I can eat them in things, but to just eat beans, not like.
Gotcha. All right.
So on the chicken.
So,
So you can go ahead and separate. Maybe you want to do maybe sweet potatoes first.
sure.
And then what I would suggest is maybe
Let me grab this.
how many do we need? 8?
How much longer on the chicken, you think?
Just a few minutes. I'm gonna check it right now. So
Yeah.
this guy we can do today. All right.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the chicken.
Giselle went all out on the flatware, huh? She really made hay.
You gotta look
The nice
fancy.
stuff, yeah. Fancied it up.
I like fancy. Sometimes, not always.
All right.
These look great.
On the asparagus, how long did you cook them for?
I probably did about 15, 20 minutes, which, you can saute them, you can boil them, you can grill them, you can, they go a little quicker. I went a little extra just to give you the caramelization.
Well, my sister did some. They were dried out. I don't know how long she
Right.
cooked them for. And they were rough.
Sure. I like to grill mine personally at home, but,
Does it tenderize them better?
a little bit, but for me, it's all about the different flavor profile. So that's when we came up with the menu for tonight, we just wanted to discuss as much as we could in the short amount of time that we're with each other. And so we did, pureed sweet potatoes, which we just ended up smashing. But so that was one cooking method, and then we did saute, and then we did a braise on the chicken, and then we did a roast, right? So we just tried to incorporate as many different techniques as we could, just to kind of get the ball rolling.
This looks so pretty. I love the contrast of the orange of the sweet potato with the green of the asparagus.
Yep, and that's kind of the challenge, is to fit as many colors on your plate as you can, right? Because that's, not only does it make it look appetizing, but then it smells good, it tastes good, the whole 9 yards. That's kind of, even with our yogurt parfait, we've got 3 different colors, which is kind of nice. We probably could have gotten away with cooking 1 pack of chicken.
Yeah. Hey, there were a good amount of people registered, and let me tell you, it's challenging to buy not only for like 22 or 25 people, but knowing that the portion is small. So I was at the grocery store, I'm like, all right, divide a chicken breast between 3 or 4 people. I was trying to make this math, and yeah. So the purchasing part is something that I'll learn as I go.
I shop like my mother. I just put whatever I want in there and I go home. And then they go, how much was that? And I go, I don't know. It was a lot.
Well, I have to stick to the budget
Oh, no,
here.
totally. I'm just talking about real life.
But let me tell you, for people that think that cooking healthy is expensive, I estimated maybe like 25, 30 people thinking because of the maybe someone else that they would bring with them. And I spent on food, on plastic cups, on plates, on cutlery, is that how you say it? Yeah. And on napkins, $100 for all that people.
We need to get her on that show with Guy Fieri, Guy's Grocery Games. Giselle she'll bring home the gold medal. All right.
I love that show.
Yeah.
Really? I haven't seen
tray. Let me land this right
I'm gonna
behind.
have to
Oh,
check that one out.
yeah. You know, adding cinnamon to sweet potato is not something that I was familiar with. I really like the smell of it.
You know, back in the 80s, they used to put marshmallows on them. Does anyone
Yes.
remember that?
I've seen that.
You know, that's, these days if you did it, they'd be like, what is that?
Oh
Why is
no,
this-
we have to do both. We do
Yeah.
nuts and marshmallows at
Right.
the holidays.
Yeah.
Oh, and now the slicing
Yeah.
demonstration.
And then we'll do the chicken. So one of the tricks that I kind of learned with chicken breast over the years, especially if you want your portions to be smaller, which kind of like Giselle was talking about with your grocery shopping. If you bought one packet of 3 chicken breasts for one person, that could be several meals.
Oh, yeah.
It could be a lunch and 2 dinners or something like that. So something else that I've noticed that's popular, like at Publix, is they'll actually sell segregated chicken tenders that are in the pack. And so, for me, it pains me to see the price of certain things in the grocery store as opposed to a restaurant where you buy in bulk. Like, for example, when I order chicken breast, I get 40 pounds at a time. And it's just raw, unprocessed, good to go. But in the grocery store, you get 3 tiny breasts for $6.70. You're like, whoa,
Yeah.
that's really expensive compared to what you buy in a restaurant. But one thing that I'll show you that's it's 2 things at once, and I try to always do multiple things at one time. So they say a chef in the kitchen should be trying to do at least 3 things at one time. And that just, once again, it's a mindset, and you can kind of clean as you go is one thing, right? With this chicken breast, I'm going to show you just an easy way. So once again, I have the skin side of the chicken breast up, and then I'm going to take my knife, and this is kind of advanced. If you don't feel comfortable doing it, no problem. But I'm just going to cut the chicken breast along the bias, right? So now I've got 2 pieces of chicken breast instead of just 1. And then I'm going to rotate it around, because when you cut vegetables, you want to cut skinny side to big side. So with this chicken breast, I've rotated it now to where the smallest portion is towards myself. And then when I take my knife, I'm going to cut the chicken breast on a diagonal bias. Okay, and I'm also going to tilt the knife so I get 2 angles on the chicken breast at one time. So once again, we talked about plating, colors, knife skills. With the chicken breast, like I said, I'm cutting it basically 3 different angles at one time. But now I've also got the angle going, right? So not only am I cutting through the 2 layers that I did before, but now I've got nice thin slices of chicken breast instead of a big bulky piece. And a lot of this is just repetition, but then when you actually fan it out, so it's actually 2 different layers. So not a big brain busting trick, but it's just something that when you get in the habit of doing, it's already kind of portioned out for you. That's kind of one of the reasons I like that. Once again, when it comes to preparing similar meals all the time, try to cook it different next time, right? So if we're about to get into warm weather, if we have access to a grill, that's a good one. But with the chicken breast, once again, I just kind of go from big to little, and you want to use the meaty part of your hand because you have the least amount of sensitivity in the meaty part of your hand. Because I remember when I first started, you're cutting extremely hot items right now to get them on the plate for the customer quickly. Like, how do you do that? Well, you use the meaty part of your hand. And remember, we want to top those with bell peppers, right? Okay. And that's pretty much it. You could also do the same thing with, if you're trying to watch your calorie intake, but if you're sensitive to certain sauces, lemon juice can be your friend too. I mean, with a fresh lemon, you could go right over the top, especially fish. That obviously pairs better with fish, but that's a good one. But please consult your local dietitian for those needs and wants. But,
My problem is cooking something and then having no taste. It has no taste.
Right. And, one thing that I forgot because I was in a hurry to get here after almost 2.5 hours of sitting in traffic. Left it in the car, but that's okay. I was gonna say, you know, these days when it comes to restaurants and marketing and sales, it's just so easy. So for example, one of my favorite barbecue restaurants in the country is down at St. Simon's Island, Southern Soul Barbecue, and they actually sell their spice rubs online, and so it's great, and you can order them right there on Amazon. You know, so that's kind of the day and time that we live in. Is if I want something, it's on my doorstep in 2 days. So it's just kind of nice because they have a very unique blend. They even have a jerk chicken blend that's pretty heavy in spice. So once again, if you're sensitive to that, it may not work, but just a little bit of that could go a long way because it's like a Jamaican rub. And I think it had like 17 different herbs and spices or something crazy, but very good. And that's all, folks. What else? Anybody have any questions?
And it looks so pretty.
We're going to show the plate to those on YouTube.
Man, I love the smell of this.
That's good.
Now I'm always gonna cook.
And then your bell
sweet
peppers, right?
potatoes, Oh, and the bell peppers.
There we go. So we did a roast, we did a braise, we did a saute, we did a boil, we did some stuff. And once again, if you're working backwards or if you're pressed on time, the yogurt thing could be made earlier and tossed back in the fridge. Also, it'll kind of marry together better once you kind of recool it. This is a little trick of the trade. If you're cooking for a lot of people, that yogurt parfait, I do it in a casserole dish, believe it or not, like a glass Pyrex, where you can layer the bottom with your yogurt and flatten it out with a spatula, then go over the top with your fruits and add the nuts last because you don't want them to get soggy. And you can store that in the fridge, and when you're ready to serve it, just pull it out and toss some, whether it's granola or nuts or a mixture, right over the top, and it stays pretty. Of course, it's funny.
Scoop it out.
You scoop it right out, portion it. You know, if you're cooking for you're like a big family or whatever. But typically when I do that, I keep some extra toppings because everyone wants to scoop the good parts out, leave the 000 yogurt. They're like, no one wants that part. They want the good stuff. So it's
good. It's good.
I like the asparagus. You can taste the lemon and
right, yeah.
beautiful flavor.
But just little stuff. Those are the tricks of the trade. You know, because one other aspect when it comes to cooking in a restaurant is, budgets are obviously an important factor since it's a business, right? So the portioned out cooking items that I showed you from the very beginning, whether it's the salt and pepper together, the olive oil in a container so I'm not dumping, wasting a lot of stuff. Some people don't think about that, but it can be important, but also who doesn't want to save a few bucks? That's nice. But it also is a portion control thing as well. But that study that I read recently that restaurant portions are 4 times bigger than they were 50 years ago. That's something to think about. It's just we live in a country of excess, which is not a bad thing always, but I mean just our lifestyles have changed.
Well, one of the things we talked about at our last support group is some patients were sharing, sometimes what my recommendation is ask for a to-go container as you order your meal so that you can put part of it, take home with you. And one of our patients said, well, I actually asked them to box it up for me so I don't even have to worry about it.
Right.
So thank you, Clint, for driving all the way.
thank you.
No problem.
I hate it was a long drive, but I appreciate you coming up for us.
I knew I was in trouble when the GPS said 1 hour, 58 minutes. I was like, to go how many miles? It was just the time of day.
That's all.
Yeah.
But it worked out. We had plenty of time. We got it all done. But yeah, I mean,